gentlemen, the Uncutt Podcast.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're alive.
God, you guys got to give me a cue, dude.
The cue is the video stopped playing.
Yeah, like
Fucking goober.
God, you're such a Joe Swanson. I swear to God.
I swear to God, like
Getting
as if
pumped
your
up.
TikTok wasn't bad enough today. I have to deal with this now.
You know what? That's it, Nick. I'm never doing another TikTok in my life.
Look, we have the TikTok god down here.
I'm trying.
Vanilla Nick Harrison.
I really am.
We have me, guy who duets everything.
Would that make me like the counselor instead of the professor?
I think you're the substitute teacher. Wasn't that what we figured out last week?
Yeah, substitute teacher. Yep, that's
I
what
like
we're going with.
TA.
You're
I
like
like
camp
TA
counselor.
too, but I don't think we're allowed to talk about him on the show.
No.
Exactly. Anyway, this is not the old show, Robbie. You got to remember.
We're keeping it classy now.
We are. We're classy, professional gents.
God, that's weird to think.
I need a stress. Hold on. I need a stress breaker. Oh, okay. I'm ready.
You realize that's going to be on the audio feeds, right?
Yeah, people are going to think you pooped yourself. To be real with you.
You're...
And I'm not.
Anyway.
So I'm trying to be professional right now and not be a huge fucking mark. But
we already did backstage too.
I totally did. Like as soon as he said I did, I like fangirled inside. I squealed a whole lot. It was a whole situation. Because let's be honest, man. I have like one of my 10 favorite wrestlers of all time, probably even higher on the list on the show tonight. Like
he just went up.
He's even higher on the list now.
After the backstage conversation, he even moved up on mine too. Like
he's like, I think he's now replaced AC Mack as your new best friend.
If they're 1A and 1B, I will not say which one's 1A and 1B right now.
Nice, and we might know in an hour. We'll see.
Oh, we definitely will probably know by the end of the hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight. I could not believe I'm about to say this.
Who would have thought?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Intrepid Traveler, Paul London.
And a roaring slap by What is he doing? Look at this. Springboard moonsault.
Wow. Wow.
Okay.
We bring the heat, sir.
Dude,
wow.
Shout out to Joey Taylor for that awesome video, dude.
And
honestly,
the
that, Vegas and the whole indie movement.
Wow. Like that video is almost started crying, man. I was like, I don't remember that guy.
Dude,
wow.
Yeah, man,
thank you guys. That was really something. Wow. And you said who made that video? That was Joey?
TJ Vegas.
TJ Vegas.
TJ Vegas. I was way off, Joey. Where did I get that?
Well,
ipso facto, they're the same person.
Yeah.
Same person.
Okay. Wow. That was really something. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being
The
here.
pleasure's all on these screens, sir.
Yeah,
hey.
we're all just like
Cool.
kind of shocked. No.
We'll wipe them off after the show. We'll wipe them down.
The whole
All right, Dad.
bottom of my laptop is sticky right now. Anyway,
Full Randy Marsh spooky ghosts.
it's just that the whole situation never happened over here.
The ghosts.
You guys didn't
The
see the
ball.
spooky ghosts? Oh. Yep,
So,
we're
Bowman, you've
30
been
seconds
around
in
for-
already talking about ectoplasm. Yep.
Yeah, the whole fucking thing, man. So you've been around for fucking 20 some odd years now. What was the moment in your life where you were like, you know what? I really think I'm going to be a pro wrestler.
Man, I don't know if I've even had that moment yet. It's all just been a big illusion. Yeah, I don't. That's. I'm trying to think of how far back I can remember. I mean, I think I really kind of got hooked on it oddly through magazines when I was like 10 or 11, and I saw this this magazine at the grocery store with the Hulkster on it. It was like a WWF magazine. I think it was covering maybe the Rumble of '91 or something. He was like clutching this flag, and so it was like the pictures. Like I saw professional wrestling through magazines before I ever saw it on TV, and I think it was just credit to the photographers. The imagery caused my mind to kind of connect the dots on what I was trying to like. I was like, what is this? These big kind of like gladiator guys in costumes and very colorful, and then I started watching it, and I was really hooked. So but in terms of when I man, it's hard to pinpoint when I said, you know, I'm actually really gonna do this. I think I stepped into a ring for the first time when I was around 16, and it was, you know, the training wasn't anything spectacular or anybody of name. And I don't even think it was a real ring. It was like a boxing ring, like in the corner of like a gym or something, where it was like the posts were like built into the ground. It wasn't even elevated. I mean, it was like a really shoddy kind of ring setup. But just I did martial arts as a kid, so I kind of knew how to fall and all that kind of stuff. So on my first day kind of training with these local weekend warrior type guys, I was taking backdrops and like doing all this stuff, and they were just like, what are you doing? Like, oh my God. And it just felt really natural to me, you know, like I grew up on a trampoline, and I think my neighbors probably thought I was a special needs kid or something, because I was, you know, I had like my Ultimate Warrior wrestling dummy, like the buddies or whatever, those pillows, you know, and I was like hitting myself with it and like taking moves for this pillow, and you know, so they probably thought I was not all there, and I'm not, but yeah, it just, to be honest with you, I'm very grateful. Just it's tough. I can't say I really watch wrestling so much anymore. But just because it's just changed so much from what I fell in love with. And so you know, yeah, it was easy. It's hard to say that, because so many people are like, oh my God, like I've been at this forever and I can't get, like I get whatever, I'm not going to get signed, and it was, I don't know, I guess it was kind of like I said, like an illusion in a way, because it was when you're that driven and you're that committed to something, the struggles you welcome them, you know, you welcome the struggles, you know, because I had read about all these guys that I looked up to having like lived in their cars and, you know, done this like this paying your dues kind of thing, and I welcomed that because I thought, you know, why should I be any different? And so, you know, I officially kind of started I would say in like late 99, 2000, early 2000. And I was under a contract, like, you know, almost about 3 years later. And I was enjoying the whole ride of it. It was very frustrating, don't get me wrong. Any performance endeavor will break your heart at one point or another. If obviously if you really care about it and you're in it for the right reasons, it'll shatter you, because there will always be lesser talents getting opportunities that you feel that you deserve or that you earned. There will always be shitty people ahead of you. There will always be shitty human beings getting the opportunities and the riches and all that kind of bullshit. And it so again, I mean, if you're in it for the right reasons, you get through that stuff, but it still fucks with you, like a lot of times. And so the ascent to me wasn't I mean, I was like the starving artist, blah blah blah, but it wasn't anything that I wouldn't do all over again, and haven't done again in a different way for other things. But in terms of like when I realized I could do this, I don't know. My first real trainer of name was Ivan Putski, and I had dealt with so much up to that point, just in terms of trying to find somebody of quality to train me. I had been to like exotic Adrian streets when I was like 16, and that was a complete sham. Skull Crushers. He used all our money to get like eye surgery, and then he like never showed up to train us. Like I had, made my way out to Florida, and it was just a big eye opener, actually, like at 16, that this business is full of shysters and liars and really bad car salesmen. And I'm not saying that's how it is now, but those carnyisms, they still exist, because the foundation, in my opinion, at least how I was taught, was that this business, I mean, it's smoke and mirrors. Maybe not so much today, because these people are actually like hurting each other, and they're not very skilled in the art of illusion, in my opinion. They're certainly not skilled in the art of kayfabe. Everyone wants to just give everything away and be loved by everybody, and it's embarrassing. But the true art of the wrestling business it's smoke and mirrors, and it's really making the people believe that something that is generally conceived as predetermined or phony or whatever is real. I don't know. Like, that was pretty real to me. I mean, that's the real essence of what we're doing and what we're out to do, is to truly make the non-believers believe. And I think that's definitely one of the big reasons I don't really care to watch wrestling anymore, is because that whole notion is kind of frowned upon and laughed at. And I think it's a lazy approach, just because it takes a lot of commitment, and people won't be your friend, or they won't understand why you're doing it or whatever. And today, with social media and all this bullshit, it's way easier to pander and get people to hopefully like you, so they're willing to like just give it all up and admit that it's a show, and admit that it wasn't real. And we see guys pulling chairs onto their own heads to take moves, and it's all bullshit. So it's embarrassing, but I'm fortunate. I was brought in by a lot of legendary guys. Like I trained with Ivan Putski. I trained with both the Funks, Dory and Terry. I trained with the coaches surrounding the Shawn Michaels Academy. I didn't train
Rudy.
with. Yeah, Rudy Boy. I mean, honestly, he was the nuts and bolts of that whole program, and so I'd like to think that I was very fortunate to learn from a ton of like territory guys who did it for real. They were the real deal, and they were living there throughout the whole truth of what kayfabe stood for. And I was fortunate to get mentored by Roddy Piper, and was able to share locker rooms with some real greats. And for that, I'll forever be fortunate, and grateful for that, to have shared locker rooms and trained with, the Chris Benoits and the Bob Hollies and a lot of these like really tough guys, like I said, Eddie Guerrero, and it's a lost art in a lot of ways. It's a lost art, but I'm very grateful for that, because it's so far and few between now. It's just like, hey, or like me, I'll tell you this, like we hate each other, but like we really like each other, and I love you, and then it's like fuck you. Fuck you. Nobody wants to hear that shit. Like I want to believe.
Yeah.
I want to believe this stuff.
Yeah.
But give me something, like Bret Michaels says, give me something to believe in. Yeah. I can't believe I just quoted Bret Michaels.
Welcome to the Rock of Love chat, folks.
That's it, man. That's it. Line them up. I'm notorious for answering one question with the most drawn out, horrible.
That's what we're here for.
No,
what
and
what did we actually ask him?
Maybe it's
you
maybe
piggybacked
it's
a great one, though.
maybe it's a therapy session, eh? No.
I hope so. I could use
Sometimes
it.
it's necessary.
I could use it. I was just told it'll take 2 to 3 weeks for me to see a therapist. So I'm fucked.
You bring up a great point earlier about dealing with the car salesman and a lot of the mental ambiguities that you've had to deal with throughout your career since you started with it. How did you deal with so much of that shit and dealing with so many of those people that were, real to your face and then stab you in the back type of people as much as you had to?
It's weird. It's I don't want to sound too cliche at all. I had this like insane belief that I would make it, and it took an insane belief because I'm not a big guy. I'm like 5'9", 5'10". I've never really been more than 185, 190. I've certainly never been over 200 pounds, and now that's commonplace. But back when I was breaking in, it's like when I do seminars, whatever, like the wrestlers of today, like a good majority of them would have never even been allowed into the locker room, much less into a ring to train, because they're either too brittle or they just wouldn't have been allowed. I mean, it was really a sport for big guys, and like the business of these, big behemoths. And so for me to have kind of slipped through the cracks and make my way in, it gave me a lot of confidence, obviously, but it was because I had this insane belief that I would make it. Like I had no other choice. My dreams, everything pertained and revolved around wrestling. And it's silly, because I wish I would have loved something else just as much. But then I think had I divvied up the love that I put into it with something else, it may not have worked out, it's vastly, it's who isn't a wrestler today? You know what I mean? Like who isn't, honestly? You look on any goddamn profile of Twitter or Instagram or whatever.
TikTok.
I'm sure you guys could be wrestlers next week. I mean,
I can't pass a physical. I tried.
Doesn't matter.
I already tried it. It
Two
was
brain
like
surgeries,
15
Paul.
years of
Can't do
not
it.
making it anywhere.
Oh wow, 2 brains. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys are here. Well, I just think like today, it's so much. Today's probably as easy as it's ever been to be a wrestler. You know, all you have to do is go to like Joanne Fabrics and get some shiny shit and wear it, and you know, take
Yeah,
some
just get some pleather shorts and you're gonna be set.
take some
Little bit of vinyl.
pics, a little bit of vinyl, some glitter,
Lots of
and
baby oil.
sure, whatever, you
Grow
know,
your hair out.
that's it. And you know, it's so yeah, it's there's a lot that's changed, but it's I don't know. I mean, you deal with the people that you you have to have instincts, obviously, to rely on. Otherwise, you will be taken advantage of, and you have to at some point you will get taken advantage of. Like people will cheat you, and they will lie to you, and they will stab you in the back, and it sucks. But that's I mean that's kind of how you learn. You know, like that's kind of what hardens you and gives you those street smarts. And if you don't learn from that, then you know, good luck. I mean, it got to a point, honestly, when I was with the entertainers, where I stopped riding with people altogether. Like I didn't ride with anybody because people will always ask me, like, who did you ride with when you were up there? Like, who did you travel with? And depending on who was on what show, you know, it typically I would ride with like Jimmy Yang Wang. He was probably my most consistent riding partner, him or Scotty Too Hotty or whatever. And so I had some decent riding partners, but ultimately at the end of the day, I preferred to ride by myself because I didn't like to be on other people's time, and I didn't like to. I'd had guys steal from me, like I'd had guys steal from me in my own house, you know, like shit from me, and it's just it's a fucked nasty business. Maybe not so much today, but I'm sure it still is. You know, I'm sure a majority of the people you see on social media who are kissing each other's asses are really talking shit about them when nobody's listening or paying attention. And it's sad to me. You know, it's sad to me that it's a business steeped in cowardice, you know, and fake tough guys. So, but that's why they're doing this and not in the army or the military or fighting for real in MMA or doing whatever that bullshit is. I don't know. I don't watch that either. If it doesn't really
Robbie,
look like blood sport, I'm not interested.
That's fair. Robbie, I know you're going to ask your question in like 2 seconds. This is just a comment. Paul,
You're
I
fine.
want to just thank you for being as just genuinely honest as you've been throughout this conversation, because we've had a lot of people come on, and I'm not going to sit here and talk smack about any of our previous guests, but they always come across as like the character of themselves, where you're just being such a genuine you. And I just want to tell you that I massively appreciate you for that.
Hey, I mean, my pleasure. I don't. What kind of cheese dick would I be if I came on here and I was like, "Wah," just trying to like cut a promo and like, fuck you, you know, like, I don't have, I don't have anything that I'm like. People are like, why don't you really wrestle so much anymore? And like, how come you should do, you know, blah, and you should go here and there, as if it was like up to me. And I don't know. I guess I occasionally, when I catch clips of TV wrestling now with guys that I knew or whatever, a lot of it's kind of sad to me because I just see guys kind of tarnishing whatever legacies they had. And I'm not saying I have a legacy by any means, like whatever, but I set out to do something and I got so much farther than I ever set out to do. And I pretty much did everything I wanted to do and then some. And so now it just seems like, I don't know, like why shit on that, and why put myself in a position to be injured by untrained mimicking memorizers, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So A lot of it doesn't really interest me. That's not to say that I don't love it. I love professional wrestling, but thank God for YouTube, where you can actually watch professional wrestling from like yesteryear or whatever. But yeah, I think it's just like the actor in me. Like I was an actor before I was a wrestler. I was a kid, and it wasn't until I started paying my dues all over again as an adult, going after I was about to say as an adult actor, but that was going to sound horrible. But as like an adult, which adult is questionable also, but it wasn't until I really was sinking my teeth into my acting training and everything that it just real is real, and when you know that something isn't real, it's silly and it can be kind of embarrassing.
You
I think
feel it
that's
for one.
yeah, and like you have to think about the performers or whatever that impacted you in such a way that you felt something, whether it was like motivated, uplifted, inspired. It's like the Rockyisms, where like people will watch like a Rocky movie or something to like that, whatever, like the music you listen to train, or I don't know, like what, it's different for everybody, but the more truth behind it, it's bound to speak to somebody far more in depth and meaningful and lasting than to just kind of play at it. And I don't know, it's weird. I started doing a lot of like martial arts training again too, like in the last few years and everything, and that really, I just thought like, God, wrestlers are the worst. Like they block everything with their face. Like there's no defense. It's just it's kind of stupid. You know what I mean? Like it's fucking stupid. Like, no, let me just hit me, or like hit me 50 times, just to back me up, and I'll reverse you. And like, and like, the punches didn't mean shit. It's like, so it's just there's so many things that just don't. I don't know. And I was stupid, and I did a lot of that stuff when I was younger because I thought this is how you do it. And, but you learn. I don't know. You learn things, I guess, as you age, and your priorities change and your interests change. So yeah, I'm glad to be real and not putting on a show or whatever for the sake of whoever might be watching this. And I'm glad there are people, if they're watching it, that's cool. Like hopefully they get something out of it. But the more real you are, the better off you're going to be, I feel. And at the end of the day, you'll be able to go home and look in the mirror, and that's what you see. You're not seeing some ass kisser or some three-faced, idiot who, I don't know. That's got to be embarrassing, to like kiss ass like that, and I don't know, whatever. Everyone's different,
Well, so you started wrestling 01, then you went to Total Nonstop Action, TNA, and then Ring of Honor. Can you jump forward and tell us about the call up you got from WWE? You were a young man. You're given the opportunity. Can you tell us what it was like to get that call? Who called you, and who was the first person you told?
I was one of the few guys, I think, if ever. There was a time when I did 01, TNA, I want to say Ring of Honor, and I had a WWF at the time, or WWF. I had wrestled tryouts for WWF before they became WWE, so that was another fun feather in the cap. But there was a time when I want to say I had just come back from like a 01 tour, and I did like a Ring of Honor show, a TNA show at the old Asylum in Nashville, and a WWF or WWE tryout, all in the same week.
Oh,
So like, yeah, that was. I think I got like Wrestler of the Week in one of these like Mark magazines or something. So, um, but 01 was a real great experience because we still had at the time it was Hashimoto was running the locker room, so that was like a real honor to be in the locker room with so many of those guys, Otani, Tanaka, and they were upset because they had wanted to offer me a deal to be like a full-time guy over there, and my goal the whole time was always the illusion of get to WWF, WWE, like that's the promised land. I'm sure so many people don't feel that way now. And it's clearly not the same company that it was back then. But the guy who I was dealing with the most, bless his heart, well, initially what happened was Dory Funk Jr., he had been hosting this British wrestler for a long time named Adam Windsor, who some people might remember, might not. And he was decent enough, but they put a lot of weight on him and bulked him up because their belief was like, there's no money in cruiserweights and blah, blah, blah. More so Dory's wife putting that in everyone's ears as opposed to Dory. The Funks are like, professional wrestling is professional wrestling. If it's done well and believable, like, we dig it. But anyway, so they ballooned this British kid up to, I think, 240 or something, and he was decent, but it wasn't anything that you're going to rewind the matches over. And so there was a loop in Florida, WWF, and they had him wrestling on the house shows, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It was three days in a row. And then they would put him with one of the trainees at this funking conservatory. And I was fortunate enough to get the last day against Adam. And the previous two guys had pissed off people in the locker room. I think one guy had put all this like hot stuff on his body and it got on somebody and somebody got pissed off. And like another guy did like a spear. I think like Rhino or Edge or something might have been on the show. And I don't know, just so it was like these guys kept getting marks against them. And then on the last day, I kind of took all that in and was like, we need to have a good match. And we had a good enough match to where I ended up actually being the one that stood out, even though the whole thing was designed to hopefully get this kid, Adam Windsor, signed. So that's what initially put me on the map with WWF, was having done a tryout at this house show in Fort Myers, Florida. And so through that, I kept in touch with Kevin Kelly, Kevin Kelly's one of the most genuine, honest guys in the wrestling business in terms of my experience. And so fast forward to like, I don't know, maybe a few months later, and I was back in Texas and they were coming through the area. And I remember talking to this guy, Eddie Atlas, who would do tryouts for them occasionally. He was like, "Hey, are you doing the tryouts coming to town?" I was like, "No, like I didn't, like for some reason I was like, I was unaware they're even coming to town. Like what? Oh man, like I missed my opportunity." He was like, "Call Kevin, man, call Kevin." I thought like, well, how do I was brought up with a lot of etiquette in terms of do's and don'ts. A lot of that shit gets thrown out the window now, but there was a time when there was a lot of pro wrestling etiquette and, how to make sure you never get asked back again and, things like that you would just, you try not to step on your toes. You don't want to be annoying and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like, you gotta knock on the door sometimes until it answers. Yeah. And so I remember calling Kevin up and he was like, no, we're good. We've got everybody that we need, but we really liked you and you're on the radar. I thought, oh, fuck, like should have called sooner or whatever. And I was working at Old Navy at the time. So I remember like they were in Austin, which is where I grew up. And I called in at Old Navy because I was pissed off that I wasn't going to try out or whatever. And then they called me literally that morning and were like, one of the guys fell out. They need you to go do tryout. And I was like, fuck. And I like put on a suit and like overdressed and, wanted to make my best impression. And I got there and I ended up wrestling Perry Saturn. And this was when Perry Saturn was beating guys up and like getting really frustrated. I think he had like scrambled Mike Bell's bell, no pun intended. Rest in peace. But he had this reputation for like roughing up the guys he was doing tryouts with. And so I was like, I remember Tony Gurria comes up to me, he's like, oh, are you London? We got you with Saturn, Perry Saturn. I was like, oh my God, like what? Like careful what you ask for. And we ended up having like, an amazing match actually that's on YouTube. I remember he came up to me. He was like, hey, kid, I think we're working together. You want to go out to the ring and talk about some stuff? And for whatever reason, I was like, I was just about to get some food, Perry, but maybe I can meet you out there. And he's like, okay, see you out there. And he leaves. I'm like, what were you thinking? You idiot. And I ran and got some food real quick and ran out there. But really, it was just like, give yourself to whatever he wants to do. Like, whatever he wants to do. He's like, you mind if I do this tiger or dragon suplex and throw you back and land on your head? I was like, well, yeah, I'll flip over. And he's like, oh, really? And like, so I kept agreeing to whatever he wanted to do. And I wasn't telling him what I wanted to get in and like this and that, which is how guys today tend to operate. I can't tell you how many guys I've worked over the last few years who they'll find me right away and they just want to start telling me everything that they're going to do to me and that they want to do. And I just block it all out. It's like, fuck you, nope. Like, oh, okay, yeah, see you out there. But anyway, so we had this really awesome match and I came to the back and Paul Heyman was raving about it. And he's like, where did this kid come from? And like, somebody signed this kid right away and blah, blah, blah. And nothing came of that, except it just got me closer in on the radar. Like I started zoning in on it. But I kept in touch with Kevin Kelly, and this was before 01. So fast forward to like doing 01, doing TNA. TNA offered me a contract every week I went, and I was going to college full time. I was missing like half my school days because at the time they had the Wednesday night pay-per-view where it was like $10. And it was like every Wednesday, $10 pay-per-view. And so I would have to leave Wednesday morning and fly to Nashville and work and then come back the next day, and I'd miss 2 days of school, and it didn't matter. I mean, I was doing what I wanted to do, but they would offer me a contract like literally every time I went. And I was like, I need to show this to my lawyer, like, because I knew deep down it's not where I wanted to be. And I felt I was getting closer and closer. And so the guy who was extremely instrumental in helping me, besides Kevin Kelly, who was very upfront, he was like, you need to put on size and you need to wear something more flattering and you need to get a tan and you need to kind of try to look like a star. And I thought, like, what does that mean? Look like a star. What does that mean? Like, do I need sunglasses? Stupid,
fedora?
Right? Yeah. But it was Dr. Tom Pritchard who was the real guy who was like, don't sign anything. Let me talk to JR. Let me, stay by the phone. So I'd sit there by the phone in like my first ever apartment. And again, 01 was trying to get me locked in on something. And the thought of going to Japan regularly was a bit exhausting, just because I had done quite a few of those tours and I loved it. But again, it's unless you grow up obsessed with Japanese wrestling, um, that can be an exhausting lifestyle to go to a foreign land. And I took Japanese in college in the hopes of wrestling in Japan, because I wanted to just cover all my bases, like do everything you can to improve your chances and try to go up the ladder the way that guys that I admired went up, the ladder, and everyone, had some sort of Japanese experience under their belt. And so I wanted to live that. And so I took Japanese in college, and it helped, you know what I mean? But it again, the last time I've been to Japan was probably 2012 or 13, maybe, for Pro Wrestling Noah. And I love going over there. It's a lot of fun, but it's just there can be such a detachment that doesn't compare to obviously making a living in your own country, and where you're familiar with everything. So I stood by the phone, and next thing I knew, Dr. Tom was like, "We're going to send you to Louisville, OVW." And unbeknownst to me at the time, it was under a deal making more than, as far as I remember, I think like maybe only Brock Lesnar and like Shelton maybe, and like one other person had been given deals that were for more money than what I was getting, which, it was, I was like, I figured everybody was making this much, but, so yeah, then I went to OVW, and it was cool. Like, I was doing a lot of training with Michael Shane at the time, and he was a really good friend of mine. He might have been one of the first people I called, but it's difficult when you get success to share that with friends who are going after the same thing, because if they're not experiencing those same levels of success, again, it can be very trying. Sometimes that can break up friendships. Sometimes that can mean there can be bitterness,
Yes.
kind of underneath the surface,
Yeah.
or jealousy. And it's not anything that you've done. I mean, what do you? It's just really tough. It's an absolutely lonely pursuit. At the end of the day, it's a lonely pursuit. And I was willing to be a lonely guy, I guess, because of my ambitions. And I think that's part of why I was able to get there as fast as I did. People are like, "Oh, you're in the right place at the right time," and like, yeah, there's some of that, but it takes an immense amount of sacrifice. Maybe not so much now as it did then, but when I see people getting like flown around and stuff, I'm like, who are these people? And they're getting fights, and you're like, what the fuck? That would have never ever happened back when I was coming up. Like, we were driving 40 hours to Philadelphia from San Antonio just to do like one Ring of Honor show, and then turning around and driving 40 hours back to Texas from Pennsylvania or Boston or whatever. And so I think, like, ask most of these kids today, like, if they would have done that, and like, I'd have flown myself, and that's what they do. They fly themselves and whatever, but it's just a different time, I don't know. You relish those road travels because that's part of it. At least it was,
Right.
Not to say that guys don't get out there and do those trips now, because they do. And my hats are off to those people, because they're going about it in the authentic kind of really pay your dues kind of way. And to me, it says a lot about you.
You brought up Michael Shane
Yeah.
a minute ago, and that kind of brings me to something that I've kind of had on my mind like all week thinking about this show. So when you're
Real
training,
quick though, Paul, I know he's been saying all week. You've been on his mind for over a month. Just so
Literally,
you
since
know.
the first email, I was calling them like,
Oh.
you guys.
I'm flattered.
Paul London is in my
got-
inbox. This is the craziest shit of my life.
Is this really happening? Anyway, sorry, Dad. Go ahead.
Yeah. Is this really happening? Got said up until about 5 seconds before you like showed up.
That's dead true. Yep.
But when you came up in the Texas Wrestling Academy, you and Spanky, Brian Danielson, Lance Cade, Michael Shane, the list goes on of people that I remember watching.
And I wasn't in those. And I wasn't in those classes. Those guys were all ahead of me. Right. So I came like on the tail end.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like once all those guys had left, then I came through.
Okay.
So
well, that kind of.
I don't know if that'll reword your question.
Yeah. Well, seeing those guys though, and like, I mean, you did. I guess did you work some of your early indie shows with those guys then? At least no, or they were all just like.
What happened was
everywhere else.
I couldn't afford to go to Sean's school. It was $3,900. Yeah, which for a
You're
guy
paying those dues there. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, for a guy who worked at movie theaters and Old Navy and car washes, that was I would still be saving money. I know it's paying. And so, I learned that there's just some things I couldn't make work, and but then I was going to school at Southwest Texas State at the time. It's now Texas State, and Rudy Boy had brought he had taken over the TWA when it kind of disbanded and folded. From what I understood, there was an injury that occurred that I don't really have the place to talk about, but that's why that whole company kind of disbanded and morphed into Rudy Boy's company, which was like Texas Wrestling Entertainment or something. Anyways, they had come and done like a exhibition show at my college, and I had been working a little bit because I had trained with Ivan Putski and I had done a couple camps with Dory, and they were good experiences, but there was still a lot missing in terms of like psychology and really adding meaning to what you're doing out there. And so I tracked Rudy Boy down and I was like, hey, I would love to come train with you if I could and learn and stuff. He's like, yeah, come on down to the gym this weekend and whatever. And I brought this guy with me. We had a match, like a tryout match for him at the gym, and it was horrible. It was horrible. And he told us, he was like, that was horrible. Like I couldn't tell who was heel and face and blah, 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 blah. He's like, but if you got something, if you want to come to the shows this next weekend, I'll put you on. And the other guy ended up not going. So I went by myself and I kind of worked my way up the company to the point where I was eventually kind of like, I want to say like the main guy, but it got eventually to the point where, let me just put it this way. Rudy Boy was the first person to ever pay me $100. He was bringing in names to work with me, like I worked Chris Daniels, I worked Juventud Guerrera. I was Rey Mysterio's last match on the independents before he went to WWF. Or WWE, I think at the time. I can never remember when I still think it was I can never remember where it crossed over. And
Damn that panda.
Yeah. But so I had worked my way up that system while I was really kind of learning the psychology of it through working with these names that Rudy was bringing in for me and stuff like that. But I remember having read about the guys who went to Sean's beforehand and having kind of that, I don't want to say animosity, but just kind of like maybe slight jealousy where you're like, like what the hell is a Spanky? Like what the fuck? Like fuck this guy. And like, this is bullshit. I bet I could take these guys and blah, 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 because you want to be there and you're not. And so you get, I had a lot of anger. I guess I still do, but funny thing was, I was supposed to wrestle Brian once they all got released from their Memphis contracts. Rudy was like, hey, Brian Kendrick's coming back, Spanky. I'll book you guys in a match coming up. And I was like, oh, that's great. Well, I had wrestled Lance Hoyt that like the following week. We had talked about the match with working with Spanky. I was excited for it because I wanted to test myself against this guy. Never met him before. But the weekend right then and there, I worked Lance Hoyt. I want to say like in Harlingen, Texas, like just outside of like the prison, the state prison or something. It was like an outdoor show. And he ended up giving me a razor's edge and like launching me. And I burst a sack on my back. So I had like half of a volleyball sticking out of my back full of fluid, and was just it was one of the worst injuries I've had at the time. And so I had to pull out of that match with Brian, and a buddy of mine ended up taking my place, and Brian just murdered him because the guy was not very good and he was not in the best of shape. And I think Brian knocked him out like twice in the middle of the match. I mean, just murdered him. The one spot I remember in particular was they called because Brian, having gone through Sean's and like through Rudy Boy, calling it in the ring that's part of it. You know, you're not like today, everyone just memorizes everything and it looks that way and it looks fake. And there's no intent behind anything and it just looks stupid.
Choreographed.
It doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
And, it just looks stupid. So, calling audibles, that's really kind of part of the genuine nature of things. And so he had called a reverse up and over, and this guy starts climbing the turnbuckles instead of doing the up and over. And Brian was like, what the fuck? And he gets underneath this guy to where the dude's sitting on Brian's shoulders. And I'm not saying his name just for his own sake, but he's sitting on Brian's shoulders, right? As if they were going to do like a cockfight. And he ends up grabbing the guy's wrists, right? So he's sitting on Brian's shoulders with his wrists secured. And Brian turns and just drops him throat first across the top, middle, bottom. He's a bit of a portly guy, but to see him bend the way that he did on each rope, throat first, I mean, I was like, he's dead. He's dead. When I saw this tape back, because, he was my friend. He came back and he showed me the match. I was like, how are you not like in the hospital right now? Like he murdered you. But I bring that up because later on, when I packed up my car and drove out to California to train at UPW, that's when I met Brian, and we bonded over me having a copy of this match and being like, hey, I know this guy that you killed. It's like, oh my God, we laughed about it. And we were like the only two guys that would stay late after every training and get there early and do all that. So we bonded pretty quickly, just over our commitment to trying to get better. But that's when I first met Brian, was out in California. And I didn't meet Michael Shane until back in like San Antonio. And we didn't get along initially just because, again, I had worked Lance Hoyt at this show for Rudy Boy. And I knew that Michael Shane had done some stints with ECW. And I liked his work, I was like, so I figured, hey, I'm going to ask this guy what he thought of the match. And he was like, oh, that was the fucking shit. And like, you guys are horrible. And blah, blah. And he was just burying it. I was just like, who the fuck this guy? Fuck this guy. So we didn't.
Who your uncle is.
Yeah, like exactly. I was immediately, I was like, fuck this piece. Like, fuck this guy. And it wasn't until later at Ring of Honor when we beat the shit out of each other that we then really kind of bonded and became friends. And I don't think I had met Danielson until Ring of Honor. And we clicked pretty quickly, we had good chemistry, and I was still in college at the time, and he did a stay in San Antonio and slept on my couch one time at my college apartment. And I mean, that's kind of the beauty of those days. And I guess a lot of that could still be the way it is today, but with so many guys traveling and just being here and there, I don't know. It's like, it's the closest I come to being like in the army, I guess, where you just, people fall off and people disappear, and you run into people here and run into people there. And when you see them, you're like, oh my God, you're still at it. And like, you're still alive. And, because the business will make you quit pretty quickly if you're not really mentally prepared for so much of the mind games and bullshit and shows just canceling, and you show up to the building and nobody told you, and there's no show, or like the promoter leaves during the show and doesn't pay anybody, and like just just so much crap that if it's really worth it to you, you find a way to persevere, but definitely ends a lot of careers prematurely, I guess. I don't know.
Well, The Undertaker has a big reputation as being a locker room leader. Can you give us any words on The Undertaker?
Good, bad, and different.
Yeah.
Look, we only get like 150 people at the most that watch this thing. I don't think it's going to get.
No, I don't care about that.
If anything, shout out more to. I'm more worried about Cinnamon Chex getting pissed at us. If anything,
right?
Yeah.
Let it out. You'll feel better.
I had talked so much that it became mushy, so it's fine. Cinnamon Chex you can have when they're mushy, crunchy. It doesn't matter, right? And they're not paying me, so like, why am I promoting this crap? But
future endeavors, baby. You got to look at that future.
When I was there, I felt a lot of guys would be cool directly, one-on-one. When they would have an audience, they would maybe not be as cool. I personally never had any issues with the Undertaker. Like, we always, I think, had kind of, I mean, I obviously had massive respect for him, having been just this legend and always will be. But we were both, from Texas, and I felt like that was an advantage that I had, was being a Texas guy. That kind of endeared me to guys who had cut their teeth in Texas, and but I always saw like Eddie Guerrero as kind of a real locker room leader. Like, not to say that Undertaker wasn't, but Taker was just kind of, I don't know, he was kind of more like the Godfather.
Like the muscle?
No, more like the guy that everyone respects, right? And that's like the last guy you want to piss off.
Yeah.
But the orders are going to be distributed out through underlings.
Gotcha.
Do you know what I mean? And it's all in the sake of the Godfather.
Not to put words in your mouth, but are we talking like Eddie, Benoit, JBL?
Not even, Eddie was kind of his own guy, and he had come up such the traditional way. Same with Chris Benoit. That those were the guys that, shouldn't have had to, but they were the ones to, remind everybody, like, hey, keep these locker rooms clean when we leave the buildings, and like, don't leave it like a shit, man, and you guys need to be, hitting the gym and taking care of I mean, there was a time when Chris Benoit and Bob Holly basically I wouldn't say abducted, but they kind of adopted Brian and I as their young boys because there was some rumor going around that we never worked out or trained. But what we did was we always went to the gym that we knew the guys weren't going to, because a lot of them acted like idiots in these gyms when we'd go on the road. Like they would expect every gym to let them work out for free. And these gym owners are like, I don't watch wrestling. Like, I don't know who you guys are. So I'm like, tell me to my face you don't know who I am. Like, you're not going to let us work out for free. I'm sitting here like, it's $10. You know what I mean? Like, just give the guy his money. Like, he has a right to run a business too. So like after a while of seeing so much of that kind of shit, it was embarrassing. I was like, fuck, I don't want to work out where these guys are at, because I don't want to be saddled up with that kind of crap. So we would work out at like any other gym. We'd go to like a college and work out at the college gym, or we'd go, we'd gladly pay our $10. Like, we're not, we understand you have a business to make. Like, we're not, you don't know who I am. Like, nah. So anyways, they had gotten word that like we weren't working out. And so they were like, you guys are going to start driving us around, and you're going to work out with us. And, at the time it was initially kind of rough, because you're like used to your own system. But quickly I learned, and Brian did too, but it was like such a privilege, to be brought in a way and trained, and yeah, I mean, it was kind of like a young boy system in Japan, to drive these guys around and to pick their brains and to listen to their advice, and they'd watch your matches, and to work out with Chris and with Bob Holly. And Bob Holly, I still consider a really good friend. If I ever run into him, he hugs me and breaks my back. And but he's just one of the real genuine tough guys. And Chris was as well. Had a massive respect for both those guys. Chris, actually, his young son, David, when I was the cruiserweight champion, he was bringing David on the road quite often. And I would always go and get my cruiserweight belt and hand it to David to watch after it for me until it was time for me to go out. And he would hold on to it with so much pride. And I didn't realize it at the time that really left a lasting impression on him. But that was, I don't know, it was kind of like, that's how I would have wanted to be treated by one of these wrestlers if I was a kid getting brought to the building by my dad. And I figured like, yeah. And I think that went a long way with Chris. Not that that's why I was doing it, but just, yeah, either which way. Hopefully I'll run into David again someday and we can share some stories or something. But yeah, it was a real honor, man, to get brought in by these guys. And to me, they were the locker room leaders, like in my opinion, not some of these other guys that would act like pretend to be locker room leaders just because they had been in the business forever. But didn't really act like it because they didn't, I think Van Damme was like a silent locker room leader in the sense that like he wouldn't tell everyone,
He got
like, hey,
married today,
this.
so.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, Rob got married today.
Oh, wow. Congratulations to both of them. Yeah. You had legit guys and you had guys who were blowing smoke up their own ass, and you learned kind of who was who and what they were all about. And like for example, like there was this guy, Orlando Jordan, who
We all know Orlando. Yep.
Yeah, well, so I remember there was a time like when he was JBL's lackey where he, I guess, all that went to his head, and he would like every so often he would pop into the locker room and be like, hey, you guys need to clean all this up, man. That's coming from Taker. It's like, fuck you, man. Like, who are you? Like, are you kidding me? Like, fuck you. So it's just it was a weird fucking place, man. A real circus. I always wanted to be in the circus as a kid. Like I wanted to be an acrobat, and I ended up in a different circus. But yeah, and just the ass kissing was just really tough. I never played that game, and that might have been why I was only there for 5 or 6 years, because just never. I don't like the taste of someone else's ass, like like
Wrong with
a
you?
grown man, or yeah, like it's. I'm sorry, some things I just know that I'm not gonna like the taste of. But like I remember one time in Europe, going back to Taker, we had, I had recently, like I had auditioned for Superman Returns, the Brandon Routh Superman.
Yeah.
And then we went to Europe and did this tour, and the audition went really well. I got a lot of really, really good feedback on it, and they're really high on it and everything. If only I was 6 feet tall. And so we get to Europe, and we did the show in Milan, and I called my agent to get feedback, and they were like, "Yeah, they're leaning towards this other guy in New York," and da da da. Da. So like it was like you didn't get it basically. I was like, I was so just down in the dumps about it. Well, before that phone call, I was at the bar with Rene Dupree, who's another really good friend of mine, who went through a ton of shit just because, he looked amazing, but I think people forgot the fact that he was 19, or 20. Like he's just a kid, I mean, we all were in a way, I was 23, 24, maybe at the time. So anyways, I remember Taker was like a locker room leader in a lot of ways. He was. I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying he was such a legend that he was. You would see those things come out every so often, and one of those things would be like, we're at the bar, and I didn't drink at the time, and Taker walks by and he's like, "Hey, what are you drinking?" I said, "Oh, with all due respect, sir, I don't drink." Because like my brother, when I was growing up, my brother had been killed by a drunk driver, so I didn't drink for a while, ever. I just didn't drink at that time. I said, "With all due respect, I don't drink," and he was like, "Hey, if you don't drink, you don't drink." He goes, "Renee, what are you having?" And Renee goes, "Oh, I'm good, thanks." Like, so we both declined, but we declined in very different ways. And so I make the call to my agent after that happens, and I'm upset. And Jamie Noble, who's quite the shit stirrer, saddles up next to me. He's like, "Come on, man, you gotta snap out of it. Try this." And he has me, and I'm just, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like, "All right, fuck it." And I started having like a shot or something. It was stupid, right? And so then Taker walks back around, and he's like, "Oh, so if I'm not good enough for you to have a drink with, what's it?" I was like, "Oh, it's not, no, 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 no." And I tried to like backpedal, and Jamie was like trying to get me to like hit on this like Cirque du Soleil acrobat woman or something, because they were like in the same hotel or something. It was weird. And yeah, so just stupid stuff you do when you're younger. So anyways, the next day at the building, well, the next morning, I should say, the whole bar tab had been put on my room. Yeah, but that was through Bubba Dudley, another one of these fake fat fuck tough guy pieces of shit. And trying to act as a hitman for the mob boss,
Yeah.
But he's just a sack of shit. Still is, always will be. And so that was my punishment. We get to the building, We're in the ring, kind of working out before the show, warming up. Renee runs back to the locker room. I thought he was going to come back out. He didn't. Doors are opening soon. I head back. He's in the locker room and he looks up at me. He's like, "Can I borrow some of your clothes?" And I go, "What do you mean? Like, you're twice my size." And what had happened was another one of those fake hitmen for the mob guys had gone into his luggage and taken all of his really nice slacks and shirts and his shoes and all that, and shredded them and thrown them in the shower and just fucked up all his luggage and all his clothes. And so he, so that was that. And so later on in the tour, we're in another place in Italy. I want to say it's Ancona, Italy, where Pavarotti lives. And the hotel was right by the beach. And we're just like miserable, like, fuck this place. Like, I can't, this is how it is. Like this. So that night, Renee and I went walking on the beach to kind of just vent to each other, like, fuck this place. And like, this sucks. And like, what cowards, like they wouldn't even, like, he didn't even know who did it. It was like that kind of thing, where I was like,
No one even owned it.
Childish shit.
No one even owned it.
No, yeah, just fake tough guys. And so Enrico Constantino was a super, super cool guy, but he was another guy who didn't mix with anybody because he just was like, fuck these guys. Like, he would do his own thing. So I remember we ran into Rico, and this is like nearly midnight, and he's like taking off all his clothes and just goes swimming out into like the ocean and like disappears. And we're like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know why. It always was so funny to me because it was like shark infested waters or something. He was just like, nah. He's
Did he
a
have
great
the
guy.
mutton chops then when he did
Yeah,
that too? Though?
yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
fantastic.
Was he
Yeah.
wearing the face paint?
No, but he was, I don't know, he's wearing like some sort of thong bathing suit or something. It was funny.
Yeah. That's
So anyways,
yep.
Renee and I are walking and we're talking, just venting and stuff. And so the next day at the building, we're in the locker room, and again, Bubba trying to act like a fucking, who knows. He was like, I heard you and Renee were walking on the beach last night, and was that a nice romantic walk? What were you guys talking about? I just sold it, I was like, nah, just talking as friends, that's what friends do, just talking. He was like, oh, but what were you holding hands? And like, he's trying to get the locker room, to jump on it, to jump on us, and they were a lot of these idiots that just spineless fucks, and I just kept kind of downplaying it and no selling it and not feeding into it. And eventually got my jump rope and went out to the arena to work out. And Taker was outside. He was out there and he was like, you did real good in there. I was like, oh, what that? And he was like, did real good. Held your own. You did real good. You would have lasted back in the day. You would have lasted. And so, like, to me, that was like a big compliment because this is like coming from the guy, that, and I heard that a lot from Bob Holly too, that he was like, most of these fucks wouldn't have lasted back in the territory days. Like, most of these guys, no way, they would not have lasted, but you would have lasted. And to me, those kind of things, and like Benoit said the same thing, like those were the things that were super complimentary to me, where like that meant more to me than titles or holding titles or any of that shit. It was like to have earned
like
the
real
respect.
validation.
Yeah, validation and respect from like the real deal. Eddie Guerrero, same thing. Even though he wasn't on that tour, but later on, we it was. I remember talking about Eddie. I remember having worked Booker T one time, and Booker Marble, he jumbled some gibberish at me in the ring, which I didn't understand, because he was like, blah, 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 and he just shoots me off. And before I can even turn around from hitting the rope, he's meeting me in the face with his elbow, like gave me no room, right? And my nose was over here somewhere. I'm
Wow.
trying to look at. And you can still see how it's not really straight, but he had broken my nose, and still hasn't apologized for it too. It's kind of guy he is. And I remember when I got to the back, Eddie grabbed my face. He was like, now you look like a wrestler, and kind of slapped me. I was like, Jesus Christ, like,
Thanks, Eddie.
yeah, that fucking hurt. But I had a match with Kidman at a pay-per-view. And I wrestled with the broken nose because I didn't want to. It was like right as we were starting our program when our team split. And I was advised to get it fixed right away. But had I done that, it wouldn't. I could have said, I would have said goodbye to the pay-per-view blow-off match. And so I wrestled that match with a broken nose. And there's a spot in there where he literally kicks me in the face. Because Kidman was another one of those guys that was like, I wouldn't say fake tough guy because he knew he wasn't tough at all. But he just wasn't a good partner either, because if you're a tag team, you should, it's like if your partner gets heat, like you get your partner's heat. Like you kind of live and die together.
Mhm.
And he was the kind of guy who would always kind of throw me under the bus to save his own ass. In the locker room, like if people started kind of jumping on him and stuff like that. And he was a shit stirrer as well. So like I learned a bit from him. A lot of it being like how not to conduct yourself. But I tried to learn stuff from as many guys as I could in terms of like slowing down and kind of giving more meaning to things and stuff of that nature. But he was not a good tag partner. In the sense of, we never spoke outside of the shows. Like we never called each other. We never rode together. Like none of that stuff, So, yeah, I just jumped around all sorts of. I told you my answers go all over the place. Sorry.
No, you're good.
You're
man.
fine, buddy.
We're
Now I'm gonna piggyback kind of off of what you've been explaining, and I know we're gonna start winding down soon, so I'm gonna ask you kind of a left field question. You don't even have to have specific names for this one.
And we can do this again too sometime later on when you guys
It'd be
want.
my honor.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
we're all about part twos around here. So
Right
That would make Nick's next year, I believe.
Oh, you just made his Christmas, his birthday, everything.
hey, I'm just saying, my birthday week is still open.
Nice. Okay.
That's awesome.
Now,
Yeah.
what would you, and like I said, you don't have to use specific names on this one, but what would you say was either the stupidest or just the lamest reason that you saw somebody have to get pulled to wrestler's court?
Man,
I know there's probably tons of them.
well, like I remember being in Australia at the end of a pretty strenuous tour where I think we had gone to Australia for a few dates after having done a full loop in the States. We went straight to Australia for a handful of dates, down to New Zealand for like one date, back up to Australia for more dates, and like over to like, so a lot of times on these tours, you get to a point where you're sick of being around these guys, like you just, whether they're your friends or not, and I genuinely got along with everybody just because I was just happy to have a job. I was happy to be up there, even though it may not have been, like you're not like top guy and blah, 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 but like you're making the best of it, and you're making the best of it in hopes that like your number could get called any day, to get pulled into a program or something. As delusional as that sounds, looking back on it. But we had this long tour of Australia, and so on the last day, I just kind of wanted to get away from everybody, and I went up to my room at the hotel as quick as possible, just kept to myself and wanted to just go up to the room and hang out and chill out. And a lot of times you would try to stay up through the whole night so that you would sleep on the flight back. And the flight back from Australia, I think, is longer than the flight to Australia. It's weird because of the tailwinds. It's like 12 there and 14 back or something. It's bizarre. So usually you'd stay up in hopes that you could just sleep off the flight on the way back. So I'm like in my room, happy to have silence and just some peace of mind, because we were staying at a casino, and Mark Henry bangs on my door. And I'm just like, oh man, I'm not in the mood for this shit. I'm like, Mark, what's going on? He's like, come on, wrestler's court. Everybody's got to be there. And I was like, Mark, can't you just say like you didn't see me? Like, or whatever. I didn't answer. He's like, gotta get down there, man. Come on, everybody's gotta go. I'm like, Mark, come on. He's like, whoop, and he just picks me up.
Like you're a baby Bjorn, just whoop, here we go.
Yeah, like he's like the new bellhop, and I'm the luggage. And he's like, whoa, gotta take this package down to the wrestler's court. And so we get down to wrestler's court, and I'm sitting in the back of this ballroom, and Taker's the judge, of course. And he's got like a ladle or something that he pulled out of the kitchen to be like a gavel.
Somebody made him a gavel, I saw.
Well, this was before that, I think. I mean, this was like a ladle, or I don't know what he had, but the whole thing, it put such a bad taste in my mouth. But it was like Melina was on the stand. And I'm not saying she was innocent by any means, but it none of this shit was my business, right? Because like I said, I don't get too involved with people or like get into like the locker room drama or antics. I'd rather just stay out of it. And what I just remember everyone like turning on her that she thought was her friend. And again, I'm not saying she was innocent by any means, but it just seemed so kind of extraneous in the sense that like, couldn't they have just pulled her aside if they had issues with her? And like, did they really have to make this huge production of it and like bring everybody down when we should be resting and like doing whatever the fuck we want? And it was, I think the whole thing centered around her being like a flirt and with all these people and all this stuff. And they had Joey Mercury, Phantom of the Opera face, and Johnny
Nitro.
At the time, Nitro, yeah, but Johnny Morrison.
Phantom of the Opera face. I'm
Him
fucking
and
dying.
Indy.
I'm sorry.
Fuck Joey Mercury. Seriously. So
oh, Paul, you're getting a Christmas card from me. I love you for this. Oh, this is great.
well, that's for like different reasons.
I was gonna ask you about Armageddon 06, and now I kind of don't feel like it.
No,
We'll
you
save that for part 2.
You can.
Well, TJ Vegas's question was, "What's your favorite match, and why is it the 4-way ladder match from Armageddon 06?"
That was definitely a huge feather in the cap in terms of our time there and my time there, especially because we went over, which was really crazy. You know, having been in the backyard of the backyarders themselves, so yeah, that we didn't know that was going to be a ladder match until the week of. It was originally supposed to be us against Regal and Taylor.
Yeah, and then they added the Hardys.
Yeah, I think those two. Yeah, those two other teams had politicked their way into the fold, and it ended up becoming something more memorable, which is great. Except for one of those members. I remember, the thing with Brian and I putting an emphasis on meaning and psychology along with William Regal, was we wanted to make it a point that anytime you set the ladder up, it was to win the match, in terms of setting up these obstacles and doing all this bullshit that has nothing to do with actually winning the match, we had no part in any of that, because that's just we had no set. It's not how we work. So we literally had no idea that they were doing this seesaw bullshit in the corner. And I remember we're selling off from something prior, and it's kind of, okay, we're going to start moving into this section of the match, and looking around and thinking, somebody is missing. Like, who's missing here? And then, like,
The pianos hit.
Yeah. And it was like, guys, we have to go to this next because Joey's fucked up. And we're like, what do you mean? What happened? And then I got bumped out to that side, and I saw this pool of blood, and I was like, holy shit. And that was all from one of these stupid Hardy ideas that, the backyarder bullshit. And go figure, who is the only person who didn't go to the hospital to see Joey? The guy who came up with the spot. Go figure. Wow. Oh, wow. Big surprise there. I didn't even like the fucker, and I went to the hospital, to see him. And it's a shame because Joey and I liked Joey when I first met him in Ring of Honor. He was a nice guy. He was with Christian York, and they were good dudes. Because I had my first time at Ring of Honor accidentally fractured Chris Marvel's ankle on an acai moonsault. He had his foot planted badly and caught me and fractured his ankle. So, like 40-hour trip up there, 3 minutes into the match and it's over. I was like, God. So my head was, I was like, Jesus, like this is the worst. And I remember York and Matthews being helpful in that instance where they were like, hey, it's not your fault. No. So I guess it was just, I don't know, all the pills and all this, the money and blah, blah, blah that got to his head when he was up there that, he just became this real snaky piece of shit. And I don't know. It was weird. It was definitely one of those guys that would kind of babyface you to your face and talk shit about you afterwards. Because I remember having worked Ken Doan at a house show when they were bringing Kenny up. And Joey at the time, Joey had been with Mickey James or something for a long time. And then she ended up getting engaged to Kenny, or was with Kenny. Who the fuck knows, right? It's like a revolving door up there. So I remember Joey coming up to me as if we're like road buddies. He was like, "You're working Kenny tonight, huh?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Fuck him up for me, will you?" I was like, "Fuck him up yourself, dude. Like, kidding me?" I like Kenny, and we had a good match. We had a real good match. But it's just like, who do you think I am, man? Like, fuck you. Do your own dirty work. It's not my style. So I had no sympathy for him, even though I went to the hospital and was like, fuck, man, like, because he was one of the guys in the match, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And had the bow-legged beaver boy who put the spot together been there, I probably would have gone to the hospital too and been like, fuck, that sucks. All right, let's get out of here. Yeah, it's you never want to see anyone get hurt, especially in a situation like, but there are also times when
Justice dishes itself out.
karma rears her ugly face.
Oh, man.
So yeah, I'm fortunate to be walking, and I'm fortunate to, I'm sure the CTE will set in later in life. But I think, I have no desire to try to seek relevancy and remind people what I used to do and, all this at the risk of getting injured at the hands of some memorizers. So it's thank God for YouTube, right? Watching old wrestling.
Seriously.
But I did enjoy that match. It was a lot of fun, and it was a real feather in the cap, and same thing with the Rumble elimination, like there's so many of these things that were frowned upon, and could have been frowned upon at the time, and that one definitely was frowned upon. I got a lot of heat for that Rumble elimination with Snitsky, but yet they
It wasn't
show
your
it.
fault.
Yeah, they show it every year. They show it every year.
I saw it earlier today. Yeah.
18 years later, they're still showing that shit every year for the Rumble. Man,
Yeah.
Paul, I hate doing this. I really
No.
don't want this to end, man. We got to.
Well, we'll do another one. We'll do another one.
Absolutely, man. I can't
Yeah,
wait
man.
until we do that.
I will.
No.
I'll hit you up and get you in for a second part. But
I'm going to find him on every social possible after this.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, man, last segment of the show, I always kind of give the guests full screen, let you talk about your socials, whatever you got coming up, or just whatever message you want to send to the people that are listening, because I'm sure this one's going to get a lot of listens. So, Paul, man, it's been an honor.
Thank you, guys.
Dude,
Likewise.
highlight of my podcast career is been right here tonight, man. This
Oh,
has been
come
really
on.
cool.
We need a podcast more.
I'm trying next week.
All right, Paul, the stage is yours,
Good.
my friend.
Thanks, guys. If you're not already in tune with London Foo, LONDONFU, that's my socials on Twitter and Instagram. I don't use them too often just because it's all a lot of look at me kind of hurrah nonsense, but occasionally I put stuff on there. But no, ultimately just be good to each other, as Jerry Springer says. Be good to each other out there, because there's a lot of bullshit and a lot of nonsense, and you never know what people are going through. And social media can be a real troublesome thing for people. And I hope you guys are well, and I hope y'all are in good spirits. And feel free to say hi on Twitter or Instagram. I don't have a Facebook. I never have. I sure as hell don't have a TikTok or any of that kind of stuff.
Don't be judging on me, Paul.
I'm not judging. I'm not judging. I just, So thanks, guys. A lot of fun.
Thank you,
Come
Paul,
on,
dude.
Paul. This is
Thank you very
the coolest
much.
Shit, dude. I'm
Sure.
gonna as soon as this is over, I'm gonna just freak out. It's gonna be great.
Come on. I hope I didn't just put you guys to sleep just with all my bullshit, all my stories.
Not one bit.
Absolutely not.
All day.
I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna be my only mark out moment. I literally have watched the you and Brian high spot shoot like 10 times. So this is not.
Oh yeah, no, that was. Can you believe they only provided us with like one blunt? And I was like, I thought we were gonna have like blunt after blunt here, and they're just like, we got lots of beers. I'm like, I don't give a shit.
You come to Michigan or Washington State, we got you, brother.
Yeah,
damn.
seriously, man. That's where I'm
I'll
from.
figure it out if you come
Right
to
on.
Nashville. It's not my thing, but I'll figure it out.
Hey, you can take me to Corky's.
I will definitely take you to fucking Corky's. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I love Corky's, man. I love
Yeah,
Corky's.
dude. All right, Paul. Thanks
Oh,
for
yeah.
coming on, man. I'll hit
Thanks,
you up about
guys.
getting part
Pleasure,
2
sir.
on, man, for sure.
For sure. Thanks, guys. Appreciate
out,
it.
man.
Thank you, Paul.
Likewise.
Woo!
Bro, that was Paul fucking London.
But are we allowed to mark out on our own show like this?
I don't give a fuck.
We can now.
What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? They're gonna stop listening? You made it through an hour and a half. What's 2 more minutes of us just being marks?
Very
I have no words
cool.
right now.
We just talked to
Like,
Paul London for
I'm
an
like
hour.
the
Very
loudest
cool.
mouth of all of us, and I have no words right now.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't get a lot of my questions in, but he answered most of them anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta have him back on for part 2 just so I can ask about hybrid dolphins. I didn't get my hybrid dolphins question in, and I need that in my life. Robbie, you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, but that's fine.
I like
Matt does.
dolphins.
I'm gonna send you hybrid dolphins as soon as we're done with this.
It's great.
Oh my god, that was Paul fucking London. Okay, all right. Whew. Okay.
That was I gotta correct you on that. That was an hour and a half with Paul London.
Yeah, supersized episode, worth every second. We're gonna do another one, and it'll probably be just as long, and I'll be just as smiling the entire time.
Happy birthday to Maglio that week.
Yeah, dude. Come December, it's gonna be the shortest distance between 2 episodes ever because I'll get him back on in December. That's gonna be season finale. What we're gonna talk.
So what do we got going next week, Nick?
Thank you, Robbie, because I was not gonna fucking get there.
Wait, hold on.
I feel so bad.
Break it
We
down a
have
minute.
done like 16, 17 episodes as a team so far, and I have never, ever once heard Robbie have to be the one to get us back in check.
Robbie just had to calm us down, y'all.
Like,
When you want to get rid of me.
I'm gonna write this one down.
Well, yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't replace you now, despite how bad your TikToks are.
I gotta check how bad that TikTok is when we get done. You might be fired.
Oh, it's terrible, bro. It's so bad. It's like lip syncing, but it's not even right. It's a whole thing.
I saw
Anyway.
like 3 seconds of him just like making faces into his phone, and I was just like, oh Christ.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Next week on the show, speaking of TikTok, we have the TikTok superstar, the Professor Nick Harrison, will be our guest, friend of all of ours.
My boy.
Our boy Nick Harrison. I'm talking a lot of crap to him this week, but next week we're gonna have a hell of a time talking to the Professor Nick Harrison about all the TikTok journey and his journey in independent wrestling. So definitely tune in next week. Oh God, I have to do this part, huh? This is the worst part of the show.
You get to do this, Nick.
Make sure to check out on Twitter, the Ace Nick White, on TikTok, Love Panda 24x48. He even put it in his screen name this time.
I know, right?
And I guess if you want to suffer through something, go check out at Robbie Cutthroat on TikTok. At Rob. What is your Twitter?
At Rob Ungle 1974.
You're gonna have to explain that to me when we get off the show.
I'll explain it.
Is that
to
like
you.
Budge, like for Adam Cole? Like
Budge.
Budge.
I loved watching Rampage last week with two people that don't watch Being the Elite, and I was just like, Budge! And they were like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Anyway, and then there's all the Budge signs. Anyway, next week, Professor Nick Harrison. But for right now, Robbie. God damn it. How many clicks is it?
That's 1 and that's 2. Come on, guys, do it with me.
No.
That
Paul London though.
Paul